Flee. All of you.
Flee. Make for the evacuation transport.
Get off-world if you are able. Run for your life. There will be no evacuation.
There will be no cowardice. There will be no defeat. This is our city. This is our world. Soldiers of Armageddon!
Make ready.
You know, sometimes, just sometimes, I wonder, should I really talk about a topic? I try not to cash in on any topic too obvious. You know, my channel never really does that. I'm not the guy who tells you how to think, or gives you any deep, hot mind insertions into the gooey folds of your brain meats, and the dude that tells you why you should care and if you should feel anything when enjoying a specific topic. Also, to further that point, but I think after talking to a bunch of other creators about this, it's time to talk about one of the Imperium's heroes that I knew almost nothing about until recently. A man whose gaze was so potent, so dangerous, so lasery, that he became the central devil figure of several orc religions. A man whose resolve is so unbreakable that he can avoid death. Literally, and in the most frustrating way, also figuratively. Someone whom, upon the announcement of their death in lore, made people in the real world actually get upset, not at the story, but at the authors and the company who thought that that was a good idea, similar to how Kathy Bates was in Misery, finding out that her favorite character named Misery was dead. You know, how's that for a timely fucking reference? Yes, my ghouls, we are going to be talking about the one, and I guess the only now, Sebastian Yarrick. The only commissar in history whose bolt gun was actually mostly used for killing the enemy rather than his own guys. I'm gonna give you a brief overview of his lore, his history, make a few jokes along the way, and from there we have ourselves a bit of a frustrating opinion at the end because, to put it blankly, I'm annoyed with GW and must vent my frustrations into the void like there are some unthinking evil god who knows nothing but hate towards specifically me, no one else. I'm totally just going full neurotic this video. Regardless, get your popcorn, your gamer subs, and sit back as we discuss what is probably one of the coolest long-running characters in the setting. But before we do, I gotta ask, are you a fan of wearing clothes? This isn't a secret, but I have a thing for graphic tees. From the Nirvana band shirt I wore at my face reveal to the numerous video game shirts that I wear in public, it's kind of my thing. But there is a problem with that. I am very, very picky. I love wearing cool logos and symbols, but if I don't jive with the material or the subject that's on the shirt, I get this weird sense of depression, like I'm some kind of poser wearing them. I'm looking at you, Sleep Token, you band I don't really listen to but makes really cool merch. This is when I discovered something amazing. Into the AM, creators of some of the coolest graphic tees I've ever seen that don't require you to have understood and listened to an entire band's discography in order to wear a damn shirt. They match my aesthetic, and this is actually not a joke. I'm not making this up. When I wore my current favorite t-shirt of theirs, which is the Heather Mauve Eternal Blossom tee, to my parents, my mom actually asked me to get her one. That's kind of cool, and that's how you know it's good. So using my link in the description, you get 10% off your purchase. But also, they have massive sales almost all the time. So either way, you're getting some beautiful form-fitting shirts at an amazing price. Thanks to Into the AM for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to old Bailey. Before we get into it, I gotta admit something. One of the armies in 40k I've only ever had like a niche interest in, at best, is the guardsmen. I think they're cool, but when it comes to their lore, I've never really had that like goo eyes awooga moment where I see something come out and I start getting really, really excited. Like whenever there's a new model that comes out, like a tank or like the new APCs, I'm like, oh, that's really cool, but fuck me, the second there's even a hint that there's a Votan release coming up, I lose all focus and my eyes go so white. So that being said, I have to admit further, I really didn't know much about Yarrick. He's one of those characters in 40k that has in fact been poisoned by the memes of the world. We all know them. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them as someone who does 40k YouTube. But for the sake of it, I think for Yarrick, they do more harm than good. Because according to the memes, Yarrick is immortal, because the orcs believe he is. Though, honestly, with the most recent news, he may in fact actually be that. So, what is there to know about the hero of Hades' Hive? Why is he such a meme? Well, I want you to think about being angry. What was the angriest you've ever been at someone? Like, I'm talking ripping the door off its hinges, screaming at the top of your lungs, and throwing all of those before you into like a fire level mad. I'm talking wrath. That kind of shit where you feel like you could pull the concrete from the ground and throw it at someone like a tank from Left 4 Dead. Yeah, take that, magnified by like at least 2 Grimaldus, and you'd have about the same level of hate that Yarrick feels towards the Greenskins at any given point in the day. Yarrick, born Sebastian Varden, weird, on the planet of Taos 3, was what you would call an unlucky boy, as his parents were not exactly in the picture. Thus, he was raised by his disgraced guard captain grandfather. His old grandpappy would subject him to guard training at a young age to toughen him up right quick, because he knew the boy was going to have to go through something as he got older, with training ranging from duct taping a $5 bill to the back of his shirt and then telling him to meet him on the other side of a very bad town, while also giving him just a lead pipe to defend himself, all the way up to learning how to engage in hit and run tactics with enemy brutes of a superior size and speed by just learning how to outmaneuver them and use their weight against them. One is brutish tactics, the other one is, I guess, child abuse by any other name. This all came in handy when the orcs appeared, because it's 40k, and you just throw a rock in the woods and eventually you're gonna hit an orc in this setting. It's basically the main event that caused Yarrick to be the way that he is, killing damn near everyone on the planet that he was at. Varden, who, you know, I should note was like 10 at this point, he had fought for so long, was basically the only survivor on the planet when the Imperium came to reclaim the planet. Much like every other promising orphan in 40k, Sebastian, after ditching the name Varden for something cooler, which was his grandfather's name, named Yarrick, became inducted into the Schola Progenium and wanted to become a commissar. Why? Because he just wanted to kill orcs and thought he was really good at guiding people into killing orcs. Like, he wanted to kill orcs a lot. Like, a lot. Like, there is a reason why he often hangs out with the Black Templars and other Imperial Fist successors, and it isn't because they just accidentally end up fighting on the same battlefield a lot. It's because they both have a similar hatred of the Greenskins. This actually transitions him into what he was doing in his free time at the Schola Progenium, which is actually learning as much about orcs as he could, speaking with various different individuals who had had combat encounters with them to learn how their orc tongue worked and how the orc language could be interpreted so that he could understand any messages that were written by orcs, the rare few that are actually literate. Studying the history of tactics, knowing how they're actually secretly very cunning and know what their strengths are. They might be brutish animals, but the thing is, they know that they're brutish animals and they play into that to make it easier for them to do what they want to do. Basically, at the main point of his deployment, he was likely considered the most informed man on how to kill orcs in the setting, which, in a setting where orcs make a lot of enemies, is kind of cool. He served with distinction because he did have a bit of a leadership quirk that was uncommon with commissars at the time, and that was that he was not a little pissy baby who led his men from behind, blowing their heads off if they so much as looked behind their shoulder. Yarrick led from the front, trying to inspire his men rather than make them so afraid that if they back down, they'd die. This kind of made him one of the most badass soldiers possible, so he would run on the front lines of a battle to show that he would never make his guardsmen do something he didn't think he could do himself. Bro is genuinely a hero, but also was covered in so much scar tissue that by the time of his attempted retirement at the age of 70, his skin was akin to that of fucking shoe leather. And also, might I say, he was not much of a looker due to all of the scars. In the winter of his life, he tried to retire, you know, still being a member of the guard, acting as a recruitment guy for the Armageddon Steel Legion, Sebastian. Now, what do we know about Armageddon, kids? There is a few wars there, at least 3. Oh wait, yeah, there's now 4. Huh, weird, but whatever. So this is where we get to why Yarrick is a legend. So to use that as the springboard, let's talk about Hades' Hive and why exactly that was kind of a significant moment in his history, and why what happened in recent times led to the community to explode into violent spasms. To understand Hades' Hive, you have to understand a little bit about Armageddon. Though, to be fair, there isn't much you need to know. Basically, it was the site of a very important and massive battle against orcs in the Imperium's history during the Great Crusade, Ulanor. Now, it's a manufactory planet that, for some reason, brings the greatest and strongest members of the Imperium's enemies to have a big ol' scrap. Well, it's mostly orcs. Orcs and corn, for some reason. So, when you hear about a war for Armageddon, it's very likely that it's because of orcs. This was when, during the Second War for Armageddon, Sebastian Yarrick was brought out of retirement in order to share his expertise and motivate the soldiers of the Imperium who were fighting against it. The massive orc Wa, headed by old Gazgul Thraka, was basically tearing its way through the planet. Meanwhile, the Imperial governor, whose brain was as shiny and smooth as a river stone, was doing what is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard an Imperial duder doing in the setting. And I've read a lot of 40k, guys. There's a lot of dumb shit that people have done. Like, I even kind of defend Kennen from, like, the Rindsworld novel for taking a pot shot at the orc with the force field. I think that he had a point, but yeah, there's no justifying this. Basically, he had Yarrick behind him saying, there's something wrong with these orcs. They are a lot smarter than the ones I normally deal with, as they're using actual tactics. I'm gonna phone a space marine or two to give us a hand. And the response from the governor was such furious indignation that he sends Yarrick off to basically die in Hades' Hive, one of the shittiest hives on the planet, which was very much a show of disrespect to the old man. Well, joke's on him, he probably ended up being ground up into orc foodstuffs. As while the planet of Armageddon was slowly being torn apart by orcs, Yarrick was kinda just chilling. He had spent his entire career motivating people to perform great acts of heroism, so him having to turn a ragtag militia from a hive into a functioning anti-orc troop wasn't really that out of his bailiwick. So, you know, bro held his position better than anyone else probably could have in his situation. But to cap this off, Gazgul sent his second in command to go murder the leader of this little rebellion. But if there's one thing you should know about Yarrick, it's that he isn't no pissy baby. Sure, he may be 70 years old and probably more arthritic than a balloon that was left out in the sun for too long, but if there is one thing he knows, it's how to kill an orc. So, losing an arm and the one-on-one conflict with this war boss, he decapitated the orc in single combat, which very much scared the living shit out of all of the orc boys in the neighboring area, which is a rare feat most space marines don't ever really accomplish on a regular basis. So what happened next is kind of awesome, especially if you're a fan of Metabots. He took the orc's power claw that he had severed during the fight, and using some Mechanicus techno wizardry was able to reattach it to his own arm stump, giving him the crab claw we all know and love today. There are a few other things. See, Gazgul got bored of the fighting on Armageddon, so he fucked off to go amass more boys for a better fight. But Yarrick had to come to learn that he had to basically become the boogeyman of the orcs. See, he knew a lot of how to speak orc and understood all the messages that they were leaving about him, and was even starting to hear rumors about him and his reputation. So he decided to pay attention to these myths, where they thought that he could kill them with a gaze and that he was immortal. He replaced his normal bionic eye with a laser eye that legit could kill an orc with a gaze, so it's kind of cute, you know. He knew that belief was a strong part of the orc's core power base, so if he was going to be their boogeyman, just him showing up would make them weaker because of how their beliefs worked. Not to hand wave the next bit, but I believe it was during the Third War for Armageddon, Yarrick ended up even getting captured by Gaz, thrown into prison, and over a long period of time time was able to work his way up to breaking out, slaughtering so many orcs that it would bring a tear to the eye of Pedro Cantor himself, only to abandon hope of breaking out of the orc ship and just decided to detonate them all in a blaze of glory. You know, take out as many as you can on the way out, right? Only to find that instead of dying, he woke up later, fully robed in his battle gear, surrounded by a bunch of orcs that had a mixture of fear and respect for him, which for a human or space marine is kind of impossible. To note, when this happened last, I have no idea. But regardless, he was met by a cargo lifter shuttle and Gaz, who simply told him something akin to, "Good enemies are hard to find," and he let him go. I remind you, these are orcs, like orcs. I don't think there is a single moment in orc history where someone struck such respect into the hearts of an orc that as a horde they looked at him and said, "You know what, you're all right," before letting him go. Kind of nuts, which is why the myth of Yarrick was such a big deal. The orcs of most clans look under their bed to see if Yarrick is there, and sometimes he fucking is. To their credit, Yarrick tries his best to kill orcs as much as humanly possible to this day, to probably find a way to cease the mint-flavored PTSD he accrued over his long career. Get it? Because it's green? God, I'm funny. Anywho, this leads us to the modern day of 40k, or at least modern as of 9th edition, because with the announcement of the 9th edition codex for the Imperial Guard, Yarrick was declared dead in lore, and his rules were struck from the codex as well as the rules in Legends, which made me very mad, thus making it kind of impossible for people to play him with like official rules in 9th or even 10th edition of 40k. There's a lot of reasons for this. Apparently with the rise of greenskins, Yarrick had taken the fight to them, having a one-on-one duel with Gaz and losing, which makes sense. Gaz is a bit stronger than he was before, and Yarrick is older than most Space Marines at this point, but regardless, it was a bit unceremonious, to say the least, but whatever. At least we can make room for new characters, like with Commissar Graves. She's that new Lady Commissaire that kind of came to... Oh, and Yarrick's back. And also the Steel Legions are teased in sketch form. That's cool, I guess. I mean, I guess killing him off did make people feel a bit sad, and mayhaps going back on it 2 editions later will totally make up for the fact that people just wanted to play their favorite character, and you had gotten rid of him, likely as a marketing stunt in order to drive up sales for a faction that you were totally trying to pivot away from to sell more Kriegsmen. No, I understand. It makes sense. No, totally, I get it. Games Workshop, I have a simple question for you. Why can't you just be fucking normal? Okay, so I'm not a marketing major by any stretch of the imagination. I'm kind of an idiot, but to be completely fair, I think that is the best perspective here. As someone who tries to speak from the layman's mind, GW's practices to the public eye have appeared at best confusing and almost random in sometimes, but at worst sometimes have been intentionally trying to get as much money out of people as possible. I mean, you're already paying a mint for what is essentially just a little plastic toy, but I don't want to believe the worst. I'm not a doomsayer, and I still love 40k, but I gotta say it is a bit disconcerting when it felt to me, as someone who was in the audience of the 11th edition announcements. Try and find me. I'm in the front row with a pink hat that has a third eye on it, looking like I'm dying. I had a horrible migraine. Fun fact, I'm there. You'll see me. I don't want to look it up because I don't want to accidentally dox myself, or at least show off what I look like, but I'm getting off track here. Yeah, but basically, the announcement that the Steel Legion were being added the last minute to make people stop complaining, it felt a little off to me. It feels like they got rid of Yarrick, literally to make people throw away or discard his old model so that they could resell the new one later and to hopefully get a little bit higher of a profit margin. Now, is it likely that is the reason they did this? I don't know. The lore is kind of weird around the situation, and it makes me a very big sad face emoji when I see them do stuff like this. It reminds me of my big conspiracy theory that GW is getting rid of all the firstborn models as a ruse to stock up for what is existentially Warhammer 40k classic, where it's basically just going to be an Eternal 6th edition, and they put out all the old tactical marines. I don't know. It is a tinfoil hat thing, I will admit. I just want to enjoy the hobby. Even though I'm not that invested in the Guard, it does hurt to see the plot armor is this strong on some characters. Though also, I gotta say, the introduction of Commissar Graves, kinda cool. I like her. I like her weird Graves mobile. But regardless, what is the lore? Why is Yarrick back, and did he actually die? The answer to the last one is me shrugging my shoulders and half-assedly saying, kinda. Basically, Gaz crushed his skull with a mighty headbutt and planted him in the ground like a tree. Now, being so old that he resembles a cross between a Fallout ghoul and that one ancient-ass looking photo of Prince Philip, so I guess just a Fallout ghoul, probably means he'd die here, right? Nah, in a blatant theft of Crackduck's fanfiction, the Space Wolves showed up and rebuilt Yarrick, albeit not as good as they could have in the past, because apparently he's a little senile now and feels off, like he's a walking corpse, which is cool, but I feel like they should have done this in the tail end of 9th edition and then killed him off True and Blue in 11th to really hammer home the stakes of this new, I don't know, generation, because this is the True and Blue double digits now. It would have been a coherent plot arc. It would have made half-decent sense, and yeah, now there are some positives here. I like the idea of Commissar Graves being the exact opposite of Yarrick, this young up-and-comer who, instead of leading through inspiration, is actually seen as quite a horrible person. She leads through fear, and though it does get results just by her showing up, it did get a little bit tiresome for me to read, and most of the lore with her usually ends with, and then Graves killed them too. Though, it is a fun dynamic to see her in the vicinity of Yarrick, who leads by inspiration. I think the lore of how he came back was handled very poorly, but honestly, I kind of like the memes here more. Meme culture is one of the reasons why Yarrick was so popular, as they are basically just him passively aura farming through the efforts of other people singing his praises through funny pictures. And I'm like 60% certain he's the central inspiration for Commissar Rage and Johnny Fucklaw from eons past. And honestly, that's a significant enough amount of margin that I am happy to say that it's true, but we shall never know. And regardless, I think the meme of him being killed by Angron and then Gaskell tracking down Angron to get some revenge for killing his heteromantic life partner Bestie it was peak. It was a good idea. It was fucking peak, I tell you. Now, is this a decision that I think is going to impact the world as a whole going forward in terms of marketing? I don't know, maybe. There are some disconcerting aspects to this, like, for one, there is the idea that GW can actively choose to not add something to Legends, because I mentioned they didn't add him to Legends when they removed him. For those who don't know what that is, there is this kind of active rule set that is looked over and curated, and that's the main edition rules. And then there's the legacy rules. So say you have a unit that is no longer in the game or the kit isn't being produced, you can actually play with those rules instead. They're never going to be updated, and they're usually pretty weak, but they allow you to play the model in an official capacity. Now, some tournaments allow them, some don't. It's just kind of a nice sentiment to allow you to play old models. But when Yarrick was removed in 9th edition, he didn't even get legacy rules. It was kind of cruel. Also, like, shout out to the man attached to the beard known as Westhammer for making a video talking about this explicit idea. I had no idea about the Legends thing, because again, I don't really look into the Guard and their rules that often. But yeah, it shows just how much control GW has over our spending habits, or at least the amount we let them have. But maybe I'm just being a bit too doomery. I like to think I'm pretty optimistic, but Sebastian Yarrick, the hero of Hades' Hive, is a mythical figure, a legend by any other right. Someone who has fought orcs in single combat and only lost an arm. Hell, even me as a Votan simp can't say much. My dedicated orc hunter character with the worst hair in 40k, I mind you, he lost both of his arms in a fight and didn't even fight as cool of a guy as Yarrick did, and didn't even get a cool crab claw out of it. He just got robot hands. But he is one of those characters, Yarrick, that is not my weird ball-haired buddy. Basically, Yarrick is one of the most emblematic characters of the setting. He is the marrying of the idea of how serious the setting can be with how goofy. He is a man with a giant fucking crab claw who plays into the weird make-believe magic of orcs in order to gain power against them. You gotta admit, that is both badass and a bit silly in equal measures. Now, is this going to show how the game is going to proceed? I don't know, probably not. GW has been showed to cow to the screeching of fans quite a lot here and there. I'm naturally an optimist, and I am happy playing Leagues of Votann and Kroot until the planet fucking explodes. But what do you all think of Sebastian Yarrick, of GW's handling of Yarrick, and the history and legacy of the miniature as well as legacies? As much as I bitch, I do feel things are looking up. I like the way that 11th edition is looking, and I am kinda happy that we did seemingly bully GW into bringing the Steel Legion back, or maybe I'm just overthinking it and it was from the plan in the beginning, and I just like to be conspiratorial, but who cares? Let me know in the comments either way. Special thanks to my channel members for supporting the channel, making me realize that I am in a stable position in my life. I have such a lovely job. I get to support my editors, myself, and have fun doing it all thanks to you. I will have some more members benefits coming out next month. Just trust me, hang tight. Thanks once again for watching, and until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful night.